My joy is her joy, is his joy, and our joy to share. Well, welcome back to Woo Woo in the Real World. Becky and I are so excited about our next guest, Nidia Temple. So far in season 3, we've had amazing conversations, diving into personal journeys and stories of so many different women. And today's journey will not disappoint you if you've been hanging out with us in this woo-woo space. Nidia is an energy home healer, dowser, interior decorator, and stylist. And she has done lots of work in energy fundamentals, shamanism, feng shui, and interior design. So personally, I can't wait to dive into all of this because those things are very near and dear to my heart. She's also very intuitive and has the gift of mediumship. And she has also applied the dowsing method, which we're going to talk about, as anchors. And she channels and empowers homes and people with very high vibration energy to live harmoniously and intentionally at home and in their lives. So I can't think of a better jumping off point than that. And I'll let you fill in all the details and all the blanks, but welcome, Nidia, to Woo Woo in the Real World.
Thank you so much. I'm really honored and grateful to be here in your company. I see you both and, the work that you're doing in the community. And not only are you like dismantling the woo-woo, concept, but you're also spreading lots of bits of goodness and inspiration and joy. So I really appreciate you both.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank
And
you.
yeah, so let's really dive into this topic of well, first of all, energy home healing. Okay. We're not talking about just when we say energy, we're not saying convert your light bulbs to LED bulbs in the home.
Good clarification.
I mean, everybody should do that, but this is a bit
Correct.
So why don't we just start there, Nidia, before we dive into what led you there? Why don't you just explain what energy home healing is? If you don't mind.
Absolutely. No, yes, no, it's my pleasure. So it's definitely I later on maybe I could share a backstory of how I came to where it is now. But essentially, home healing is really it's sort of like a two components to it that I apply, with my clients. And the first one is I usually do a remote session where I'm able to sort of astral travel and obtain information from consciousness. Um, you know, and again, consciousness, we can talk about consciousness, a little later on, but basically, what consciousness reveals, the downloads reveals about this particular home, the history, as well as their inhabitants and past residents as well. So when I obtain all this information, then I'm able to kind of gather, the energies that are there, any, as we call them, entities. And there are different types of entities, even like physical, we have which are known as spirits. And then we also have emotional entities. Like the best example that I can think of for an emotional entity would be like 9/11, where when that happened, it's almost like a trauma, that's captured in the collective. That's a massive emotional entity. In addition to that, we have the mental entity, which is a little bit more like where there's depression, or there are low vibration thoughts, that kind of thing. So I basically kind of picked that up, and very specifically in terms of numbers, like how many there are. So then the purpose and my goal is to basically, dispel, because again, it's all energy, right? And everything is energy, correct? And it can never be destroyed. So it's a process of dispelling or transmuting, transmitting, that kind of thing, So essentially, I work with light angels to help me assist, some of the physical entities that might be in a place,
Mhm.
so that they go to the realm where they should be, to complete their soul contract. And sometimes, they just need some guidance or some even light, so we light up a portal, a gateway, if you will, for
Mhm.
them to sort of exit, this dimension. So I know it sounds like, but it's really, I can, we can talk a little bit more about the science aspect of it,
Yes.
because now we have so much intelligence and so much information that really, really supports, this kind of work and these statements that I'm making.
Yes, for
And
sure.
yeah. And
Yeah.
then so then that's the first component of the healing. And the second one is I come to your home and then I bring my dowsing tools. And then just to give like a quick dowsing 101, as I was researching dowsing, I became a trained dowser about 4 years ago. And so I was doing sort of a research, and what is this, where does this come from, because I was like so naturally drawn to it, and seeing myself at this point in my 50s as a spiritual warrior and
Mhm.
light worker. And essentially I found out that dowsing was documented 8,000 years ago in the northwestern part of Africa. There are many cave carvings of dowsers, along with their energy tools. So that was so fascinating to me. And then later on, it was more currently documented in the 18th, 19th century in Germany, where they really started to utilize, the architects and the engineers and great thinkers started to really adopt, the dowsing method. And so basically what dowsing does, it originally it was invented to help detect water and metal sources. So, and, so that was sort of like the foundation of it, right?
Mhm.
So coming back to here and now, basically when I use these energetic tools that are made out of copper, which by the way, copper is remarkable because it conducts electrical impulses and it magnifies the energy transfer from the healer to the subject. So what I do is with these rods and these cures that I bring into your home, I basically use that, to help me transfer the energy and to locate foremost, the positive and the negative vortexes that are located. And so who says, what are the positive and the negative vortexes, right? Whether they are actually identified by the ley lines of the earth, it's sort of a grid. So there's like the Bermuda Triangle, for example, is one that is sort of a mystery, but yet now we know that that's a very profound negative vortex, that is just sort of like, basically is able to really um, kind of manipulate the energy and suck energy, if you will. But then there's also the beautiful aspect of the positive, which we have Stonehenge, we have Sedona in our mainland. So there are like various spots where, the positive and the negative exist. And consequently, in our land where we live as well, it's just
That's
in
right.
a micro version of it as well. So it's really incredible and astonishing to me. Like I'm doing this work and I'm still astonished every day. I mean, every time that I'm doing it, it's really remarkable how ancient wisdom is really the key, for us to continue, this journey of discovery and magnitude, to become the best version of ourselves and to heal ourselves and our loved ones and each other.
Yes. Yes. So one of the things that just really strikes me is the statement of everything is energy, which we explore and we talk about a lot on this podcast and in each of our own lives and our worlds. But and even in previous conversations that we've had in episodes that, you know, for this particular season, when we talk about our own energy bodies, right? We've been talking about the physical, the spiritual, the mental, the emotional bodies, right? And our own energy fields, right? And so when we are in a home, right? And who lives in this home with us, or we may even live in a home by ourselves. Not only does everything that we've ever encountered and our soul encountered makes an imprint or is somehow stored as energy in our own body, which then has an effect on all of our energy bodies, right? Your home or where you live, or you know, your home or where you live also experiences that, right? Like, I know I've had friends that are, you know, there's a ghost in my house. That's just one example, right? Or lights flickering on and off, or things happening on a property, or Becky is in a home that in Katona that's had this like crazy water issue, right? Water. But you know, think about just all the different aspects of your home, the property, the land on which that home sits. If it's a single home, or if you're living in an apartment building, then think of all the energy of those people, right? And it all impacts everything.
Absolutely.
And a person like yourself comes in to say, what's going on in this home energetically now? And I don't even know, hundreds of years, what has happened here, what's still stuck here, what needs to go, right? We've had guests on that have talked about helping entities, you know, cross over, right, Becky?
Yeah.
So what you're saying, Nidia, if I'm hearing you correctly, is through the work that you do, you come in and you help a home to be its most harmonious and energetically high vibe as it can be. Is that a fair assumption of what you said?
100%.
Okay, so then let's back up, because you obviously have a story of how you got here.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, so basically, you know, as a kid, I'm an only child, or a single child. And you know, basically I just remember um having, you know, these vivid dreams where people that had passed would come and talk to me and give me messages, or say things, you know, that perhaps, you know, needed to be shared with loved ones. And it was usually people that I knew, you know, that I loved, that had passed on, you know, basically my ancestors. And so I was aware. I didn't really have like a support system. I didn't really understand, you know, what was happening, but I knew that I, you know, basically had access to something, but I thought it was normal. I thought that this was what everybody went through.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, I just sort of admitted that and went on about my life. But then as I became a teenager, I started to kind of, like, in hindsight, it was sort of like the future. But, you know, back then, for instance, a thought would come to my mind and it would happen, and it would be, you know, it could be positive or negative. And that sort of inflicted a lot of guilt, you know, because, you know, I'm a recovering Catholic. So, you know, guilt is in my blood memory. So it was like the thing to do. And, you know, and therefore, you know, it was also something that was sort of suspended, because it was a power that I didn't really recognize, you know, and I didn't really realize that I was seeing the near future. And so, you know, so basically that's sort of the glimpses, right, of my childhood, my early life. And it wasn't really until my 30s, my early 30s, when I became a mother, that really I feel like that opened up, you know, as you know, we are all the ones that we know have given birth, that go through the physical, you know, labor of
Mm-hmm.
bringing another human into the world. It's like, it's in a massive beautiful portal that opens up. And I feel like that opened me up, tremendously. And so then I started to have more concrete experiences. And it was usually telling, where people that had passed on were giving me messages. And then I was able to be sort of a channeler, a conduit, if you will, to sort of impart those messages, to people that I knew.
Mm-hmm.
And every time, I mean, even to this day, I'm always dumbfounded. I'm always like so really impressed, with the information that comes in and how accurate it is. And that it's like it's beyond it. But then I realize I'm like a vessel, I'm like a channeler of that information. So essentially, I started to embrace that more, and then I started doing yoga, and I started to sort of become more introspective, in myself. And then in my 40s, then that's when it started to become a little bit more solid, and I started to slowly build my tribe, my community, and also just take a lot of education, like
Mm-hmm.
I believe a woman is a school, right? So it's kind of like becoming that in the way of taking all these courses and learning and being really wide-eyed and open, to all this information that we have out there. Obviously following my intuition, which to me, it's my intuition is my best friend, is my guiding force, is the source. And I really believe that, strongly with all my being, that we all have it.
Yes.
And it's how you really create that, and how you strengthen, and what you do to trust it and to fortify that relationship, that's really could be magnificent.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
the compass.
So it really opened up a whole world for you.
Totally. And then it
Yeah.
gets better, in your 50s, where I don't know if I can curse, but you really don't give
You
a
can
fuck.
curse here. It's used for emphasis.
Especially when you say that.
Yes, like what people think or what they might say. I started becoming, coming out more of my spiritual closet, and then just, accepting, embracing loudly, the gifts that actually has helped a lot of people. And more than anything, for me, I feel like it's given me the vein, to my life, and more meaning. And it's been really so encompassing, for me,
Mm-hmm.
to have this experience that I'm really grateful, and truly every day.
Mm. Mm.
So go ahead, Becky, you jump in, because
I was going to say that's there seems to be a common theme this season so far of really, trusting yourself and trusting the intuition that is innate in all of us. And just kind of touching back. We've talked to so many different guests about remembering, like being remembered to your younger self who did know, who had clarity, who, like you said, you didn't even think it was weird that you had dreams where people were coming and giving you messages. You just thought that was normal. And I want to fast forward from that point to when you had said in your 40s, you had started to kind of get a little clarity, and you started getting solid on it, and you were finding your community and you were finding your tribe. And I wonder if you could give us just a little more color around that, because I think it's so important to find community and to find a tribe and to find people who understand your experience, who can buoy you maybe in moments when you're doubting or you are in that remembering process. So I wonder if you could just, for our listeners who might be in the same spot of thinking, I feel like I'm starting to step into something a little more familiar, but I'm not immediately familiar with it, and I need to find community. How did you start doing that?
Yeah, no, it's great. It's a great platform, to begin this conversation about that. And again, following your intuition and really being connected, to it and your nervous system. And I really think that the body, I'm going to nerd it up with energy, but really 5% over here in our brain field, and it's 95% in our body. It's like a computer, right? So we basically hold everything, all the, it's just the network, that's able to pick up subtle energies and in every way. And I think that if we stay attuned, to our body and our nervous system when we're around people, it really reveals everything. And more importantly, not only that you're listening in, but you're able to act on it, and it could be a painful process because there could be, long-standing, long-term relationships, friendships that you've had. And if it's just starting to feel like, it's not really aligned with your body, with yourself, with your energy, that's right there an indication, that perhaps it's not, the person, for you. And it's, again, it can be a very painful process, but it's a growing pain, that we have to go through as, we're striving to be really authentic with ourselves and establish genuine connections where they're just beautiful and effortless, and where you're seen and understood. It's beautiful. That's the other side of the pain, and of the, choosing love over fear.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I like that, what you said about genuine connections and knowing that in your body. I like that, the 5% and 95%. That's helpful to keep in mind, and staying in your body to really feel if something's a genuine connection or not. That's helpful to know.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
yeah,
go
and
ahead.
I just want to say that I see that in between the two of you, and it's really magical,
Aw,
to witness that, and it's a treasure.
Oh,
we feel the same way. That's so nice.
yeah.
And I think too, the authentic sort of spark of our friendship was, I think we both recognized that we had gone through painful experiences in order to really embrace who we are authentically, right? And I know that you have had to do that as well. That part of leaning into who you are spiritually and what your journey and your path, the more you opened yourself up, right? And it happens a lot to anybody. You don't have to necessarily be a medium or a healer, right, to have gone through a spiritual awakening, and or to have hit bottom and realize I've got to go somewhere else with this, or my life, or this isn't working for me, or there's something pulling at me, which we talk about, a lot as well, right? You have to be then willing to say, I need to embrace this in order for me to give my own heart and soul a chance, right? And embracing this sometimes means your growth, and whatever that growth means for you, by going through that process and allowing yourself the dark night of the soul, or whatever, that journey meant. We talked to a guest, that dark night of the soul was 3 years for her, right? Of just thrashing around, right? And not knowing. When you do come out on the other side, you may look at people in your life, you touched on it, relationships, friendships, whatever, and say, no more. This is not who I am. And it has to change. And when you're the one making that change, guess what? It's even harder, right? I don't know if you want to talk about that at all and what that meant for you, right? The fact that
Oh no, yes.
you then opened up yourself to how you could even be, like, what the full potential was for you as a healer meant you had to sacrifice really important stuff in your life. So to the degree that you want to share that, I think would also be really amazing as well.
Oh, absolutely. And I think, again, when I started to talk about the 50s, there's like this amazing force that I don't know what it is, where you just become like, this is who I am. And so
You know
be
what
it,
I call
right?
it? You know what I call it?
What do you call it?
The I don't give a fuck phase.
Exactly. Yes, I do too.
But what we're
100%.
willing to
I
do
love that.
about it is a whole other ballgame. Yeah.
Yes, that part. Yeah, for sure. And yeah, so basically then I started to, make a deeper, the deepening of my spirituality and my purpose. And I started to see, and, one of the most difficult decisions that I just made about a year ago was actually, and it was a conscious decision on both parts, but, essentially to end my marriage of 30 years. And so that was, just really, it was like the most painful and challenging aspect in every way, but it's probably, one of the most, you know, um, empowering, experiences in a way that solidifies, my soul, and that I know that I am in alignment where I should be. And it's just because sometimes, there's great love between two people, but if you're not wanting the same things and you're heading in different directions, it becomes an interference. And then
Yeah.
in addition to that, what I picked up also from my relationship was that it was a karmic interference. It was a karmic relationship. And so it's played out. And then coming to understand that a lifetime, as you know, in this dimension, is a human construct that we define time. But time could be, when you have unfortunate situations where babies are born and they only last 20 minutes or 3 hours or, 2 years, it's so, so tragic and sad. But sometimes that's the lifetime.
That's right.
Sometimes that's what it's meant to be. So then when I recognize that, wow, 30 years, and I'm so deeply grateful that somebody stood by me and loved me, for all this time, and that was a lifetime. And
Mhm.
then it's amazing. And then to realize that, on to the next experience, and and just really looking forward, with love and and joy and gratitude, because that's what I live with really every day of my life. And I do that by cultivating, my daily spiritual practices. And if it's okay, if I could share,
Of
what
course.
I do that serves me well, and maybe it could
Yeah.
help some people. But like for me, I really always start out with my cup of cacao, which is, is very rooted in my indigenous ancestry. And so for me, it's really fortifying and supportive. And the most important aspect of it is that it really opens up your heart.
Yes.
And that's what I want to say, basically, in the nutshell, like all these messages that I have transmitted, from people that are no longer here, to their loved ones, it all comes down to love.
Mhm.
And it makes me emotional
Mhm.
because, what is love, right? Like it's a feeling.
Mhm.
But more than that, like when we measure it, when we measure the energy, which we measure by frequencies, we know that acceptance is one of the highest frequencies that there are, right? That there is, that it exists. So when we look at that, and we accept it in our hearts and we live with that, it really changes all your relationship, the relationship with yourself foremost, and then all the others as well. You start to see things from a totally different lens.
Mm. Mm.
So frequency is definitely a common theme here. And just as you talked about, someone may be listening and hear acceptance has a frequency. Well, all emotions have a frequency, right? And some are lower frequency and some are higher frequency, right?
Right.
And love is the highest frequency, is it not?
That's right. Well, yes, I mean, acceptance might be a little bit, if we're going to be mathematical, right? But
We
again, I
have
mean,
some mathematical people that are following us, so yes.
yes, sure. Yes, for sure. I mean, there's the measuring of the brain waves, when we reach meditation, and then there's, which by the way, that's actually how dowsing as well, is measured in terms of frequency. We go through the measurements of the brain waves, which, starting with delta and ending with gamma, which is like 30 hertz and above. So essentially, yeah, we're going to get into the numbers of it. But for sure, and it's okay. I mean, I think it's important also to not judge ourselves, with like if there's an emotion that is not super positive, like I think it's really, really vital, to experience it and go through it in our body. Like as I was talking about earlier, about my daily spiritual practice, that I open up with my cacao drinking in the morning, and I always bookended, and I ended with a neurogenesis meditation, which is very incredibly somatic, and it's about your nervous system. And it really is about really releasing all the tensions that we stored in our body, and more importantly, the emotions. And it's incredible. You know how people sometimes say, oh, I woke up with injuries, feeling like pains in your body. And that's because when we dream, we astral travel. We're traveling. And in our body, it's the memory of everything that has happened to us, not just in this lifetime, but even other lifetimes. And so it comes up. And so it's part of this meditation that I do that is really, really crazy simple, and really everything that's stored in your body, because in your body you store all the emotions. And there's specific information, right? Like we know the liver, the anger, we know that the spleen is indecisiveness, for the most part, right? So stuff like that, where you can kind of like, you really get to know your body, and you go into the fluidity of the energy, it starts to give you all the answers you need.
And so take me through a little bit about what you do currently, because I'm not as familiar as Tammy is with, the energy in a home. I mean, I have plants. I know that that's nice to have plants inside of the house. It definitely shifts the energy. I couldn't tell you why. I just know that it does for me. But I don't understand the principles of feng shui, and I don't understand dowsing. And so I'm kind of like your 101 person that's listening. So could you kind of walk us through, what it is that you do, and what, like, on a practical level for people, why would someone have an energy person come into their home and do energy work for their home?
Ooh, well, that's actually, I really feel like I have to touch base into the 3D talk and the 5D talk, right? The third dimension and the fourth dimension, fifth dimension. So our origin as humans, hybridized fractals of aliens, as well. We used to have 12 dimensions, but it's been a breakdown of, that happens, and it's naturally occurring. So basically 3D is a little bit more material, physical, strictly, right? The fourth dimension is usually where the souls reside, where they kind of sit, that energy, again, it's all energy, right? So fifth dimension is so much about energy and vibration. So I think that there's a lot of us that are sort of onboarding into the fifth dimension, where we start to be a more sensitive in the best way possible, to pick up subtle energies. And as such, for instance, geopathic stress that's created by unknowingly that there may be water under your structure, under your building, your home, and that causes a very subtle, insidious, or sometimes even could be disruptive in a major way, the way that you feel, and that manifest in mental health or severe anxiety, nervousness, sleeplessness, that kind of thing. And we also have interferences, from electricity, Hartman and Curry lines, which create, a lot of interference, and that really could be harmful, detrimental to our physical bodies and mental bodies and etheric bodies, because we're very complex and layered. And so those are really some of the main ones, but also the biggest one to me, my theory is also that, actually when COVID was a distraction, in the exact moment that they wanted to integrate the 5G satellite system into our Earth. And it was like a huge, really, penetration of our energy where it almost transcends the number of cells that we have in our body. And consequently, then we end up feeling like a little bit more than we typically would feel. Like we start to become a little bit more attuned, with our mood and our shifts, in our body, what we feel like unwell or the anxiety, as we can see even the younger generations, the relationship with their phones is
Mm-hmm.
so tight that it's just like they're like one. And I really think that the unfortunate aspect of that is really damaging, their nervous system, and their mental health is compromised as well. So right now I actually want to show you something that I had it because in case, but this article just came out in the Wall Street Journal, which is says energy healers are the new home repair pros. So I'm really
I saw
excited
that.
that I feel like as I started this 4 years ago, I was kind of looking into the future, and now the future is here where I feel like now people, and again, because it's also that integration into this other dimension where we have more faculties, more intelligence, more wisdom coming in. So it's really fascinating,
Yeah.
how it's a lot happening.
It's a lot. And, something that popped into my brain when you were talking about, the phone and 5G and all of that. I forget who it was that I was having this conversation with over the holidays, right? But there was a TV in a house, right? And that's, you went to a space and, back in the day, and you got your information on maybe the 5 or 6 o'clock news or the 10 o'clock news, right? And now we have so many devices. We've got laptops, we've got phones, we've got computers, right? And we're surrounded by this, not only from what we're taking in and digesting from all of this,
Mhm.
right? But the frequencies that all of this emits into our field, we are being bombarded, right? I mean, there's a blessing to all this connectivity, but there's also what you're talking about is how it affects our nervous system. And younger, kids, especially from a very young age, are seeing images and getting information and being with a computer device, right? Way younger than any of us were. What they're taking in to their own energetic bodies is so vastly different than we did, right? You either had to wait for the newspaper or you watched the news. And, eventually then we started to go to movies and things, right? But still, it was very limited. And it was, you had the experience and then you went and you did other things. And now where you're just being surrounded, right? And how all of this stuff gets processed and played out in our individual lives is being impacted, and our mental health as a society and a culture and the world is being impacted.
Yeah.
And what I love about you in this conversation is you're reminding us of these higher frequencies, these higher levels of consciousness, higher realms, quantum physics, right? And how we're all just now being kind of bumping up against it all, right?
Mhm.
Stuff is upgrading energetically, but it's also downgrading, right? And
That's right.
guess what? Humans having this experience, we're all just in the midst of it all, right? And we're experiencing it all. And not everybody is going to elevate or evolve. And some people are going through this experience not at all, right?
That's right.
And so where you come in, and to Becky's point of this part of the conversation, is what's happening around me energetically. and this is one way, I think, a big part of your work too is biophilia, which is bringing the outdoors in and really maximizing our relationship with nature, because that's also so important on our nervous systems and for our mental health, right? When we talk about what did we like to do as a child, which is this kind of theme also that's running through this season, a guest said, like, I love, two of our guests already have talked about being in the woods, being near a creek, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's powerful, because getting back to our connection to nature as it relates to our home is very healing. And so I think that's a big part of maybe what, is an answer to what Becky was talking about, is how can we bring ourselves closer to nature, and how can we help with the healing energy of nature in our homes, bringing in that ancestral wisdom, empowering people with this knowledge, but then also coming in and doing a nice energetic reset to say, how can your home support your energy? How can you live harmoniously with your tech, with your people?
With your
Right.
people. Exactly. No, absolutely. Right on to everything that you
And
said.
also businesses. Like, I just want to say,
Mm.
when we were having this conversation, and, I didn't have a space and I didn't want a space, and, and lo and behold, launched the Soulful Lounge here in our community. Nidia came, and first she did the remote session, right? And also, like, this location, for people that don't know, it's literally part of a cemetery.
Yeah. It's a historic building next to a cemetery.
It's a
Yeah.
historic
Yes.
building in this historic cemetery.
Like really old. Uh-huh.
And it's like, yeah, I want to know what energetically is happening here. Like, do I need to know what do I need to know? And so Nidia did her remote session, and she said, I found stuff. For the most part, everything is really good, but we have to fix a few things energetically. And she came in with her copper dowsing rods that are about like 24 inches, Nidia?
Yes. Exactly.
And they're beautiful. And
Mm-hmm.
she walks around, and she has this tool that she uses to read the energy of how things are happening and what's happening. And she identified accidents and trauma and people that have been in the space that have impacted the space. And knowing some of the history about it, she was right on. Like, for me, I knew the history, she did not. And some of the things that came up were very specific. The woman that runs the historical society had told me about this accident that had happened with these children like hundreds of years ago, right? But they were buried next door, right, in the historic, and she talks about it as part of this historical story, to the point where she had an accident and almost fell into the septic tank on the property, so, but energetically, things have happened in the space that have impacted the space and the history and the energy, and that stuff can get stuck.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
So,
Again, yes, energy, we can never destroy it. So we shift it.
so what were you feeling? I'm just so curious, like, from a lay person's standpoint. So when you did the remote session with Tammy for her new space, how does that work for you? I mean, what are you feeling? Like, how do you know these? Like, how do you know
No,
these things, right? Like, I'm so
absolutely.
curious.
Yeah. So basically what I do is I do a light meditation, and, again, I always work with Archangel Michael, which is known as the big protector and entity, kind of leader, if you will. And, and also my astral traveling, so that basically what I do, I'm able to travel, just like when we do it when we're dreaming. It's kind of almost lucid dreaming, where you put yourself in that energy field that you identify, and then I get information from consciousness. So consciousness doesn't have to be, I don't believe, has to be attached to a body. It's just energy. So then basically that's how I'm able to obtain some data and information that's specific. Sometimes I get visual, sometimes I they show me, when I say they, I like, it's my guides and my team basically, that helps me do this healing, because I don't do it alone. you know, basically, you know, they show me sometimes. So I saw like blood, you know, for instance, in this particular corner of the location that happened many, many times, many years ago. And so there was that trauma, and then more than the blood, because blood we all bleed, right? So it's like, you know, it's natural, it's normal, it's fine. But it was more the emotional trauma. That was a huge emotional entity, you know, that was there as well. So it was really interesting because I didn't know that about the kids, by the way, Tammy, but you know, you did share with me how, you know, as you were renovating the place, making it even more beautiful, that your construction guy was saying how he had a particular hard time with that specific corner. So yeah,
Yes.
the energetically, right? It was just really interesting. So healing occurs, you know, because then again, we're able to shift that energy and heal it. You know, you feel it to heal it. So you go through that process, you know, and basically what I do is I tap into also my ancient, you know, earth wisdom, you know, using herbs and using you know, uh, herbs like, you know, sage and copal, which I cannot be without, which comes from Mexico, and it's this powerful wood resin, you know, that just is able to, you know, really transmute energy very powerfully. So that kind of thing, but also crystals, which, you know, again, kind of going back, Becky, to what you know, your original question too, and leaning into what Tammy was saying is, you know, is also the intuitive design is also healing, is clearing sort of the negative unwanted energies, but then it's also bringing in, and then it's bringing in, you know, increasing the frequencies, but also bringing it in with like biophilia or using feng shui. You know, those are the methods that I use. And then so even sacred geometry. And by the way, I'm writing all this, and I'm actually anticipate that my book will come out, and hopefully, God willing, in the fall of this year.
We'll have to have you back
Where
on
is
to talk about the
Yeah.
book.
the book that I actually trademark, the title is called Home Sapiens, and it's about bringing in heart and humanity and nature into interior design. So it's really talking, you know, so much about how we need to be so connected to our heart, you know, when we seriously, you know, curate all the objects that are in our house, because we want them to emit joy and to, or a beautiful memory, you know, in our blood, right, in our lives. And so we have that, you know, that choice, you know, that we're able to curate that. And then so going back to biophilia and the fact that we are inherent, you know, drawn to nature, and that we, in a way, we are nature in
We
a
are
big
nature.
way.
Totally.
We are. It's so vital to us, and it's been proven, you know, that how the ocean emits positive ions, that it changes the biochemistry in our body. You know, when people, and just recently too, I just read about this study that said that how people that live by the ocean have greater mental health. And so it's no surprise, you know, that all these elements, you know, and even some of the people that have more privilege financially, and they're able to get their beach home in a way, and that's part of the subconscious ideal, you know, that they're happier and better, because in a way, you know, they do have access to these amazing, you know, choices as they create their utopias and their personal sanctuaries as well. And so it's using also sacred geometry, which is comes from the flower of life, where everything is interconnected. And, you know, basically based on that all forms of life, the animate and inanimate, they have opening, we have open energy systems, you know, chakras and meridians and stuff like that. Physical, vitality wise, emotional, mental, etheric wise, but also there's an abstract collective energy that surrounds us, where there's this conscious, you know, transmission between humans and that energy, you know, that is symbiotic. And so then biogeometry was formed, and architects started to use that, basically using geometric structures and sound therapy and colors, you know, to influence and grow the positive energy. Now, feng shui is way more ancient in a way, and that was derived from the laws of heaven and earth, and also astronomy and geography, and basically to invite positive chi. So that's sort of like the more Eastern philosophy, right? And so we have all this information, all these elements. So then basically in my work is like I am curating, all of these modalities that can really enhance our wellness and really support our journey towards being the best version of ourselves.
That's beautiful.
Thank
That's really
you.
beautiful. So if go ahead, Beck, if you have a
Oh,
question.
no, that's okay. I think you were getting ready to ask. I feel like I heard what you were getting ready to say, and I think it was mine. So go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. So I think, first of all, we tackled just an amazing arc of not only the energy conversation, but how we can, I guess maybe what I'm looking for is kind of cherry pick from whether it's this conversation or different episodes of woo woo in the real world, what we each can cherry pick that will resonate with us and helps us to get to that next step on our journey, right? And so I loved so many aspects of what you were describing about bringing nature in, or really looking at, I remember an earlier conversation that Becky and I had. It's like, why do we think the things that we're thinking? Why do we do the things that we're doing, right? And even like right now, just to put a bow on the conversation, it's like, here we are, we're launching into, it has launched the year 2024, which is the energy of it is very abundant, like the earth, right? It's very action oriented. It's very like, we're coming out of introspection and we're bringing into our lives what it is that we want here in our lives, right? And what do we want to do with our life? And so following up on this conversation, it's just so great to say, why are the things in my home here in my home? Like, is there clutter around? Should I bring a plant in here? What colors do I like? And just kind of going through your home and with the lens of this conversation, what is the energy of my home? How does it make me feel? How do I want to feel? Right? We talk about alignment, and what does alignment feel like in our bodies? Well, what does alignment feel like when you're walking through your home in your body?
Exactly.
Could you make a little chair, pocket, corner for yourself to just check in with yourself this way? Not everybody can wake up with a cup of cacao, but if they want to, or that tea, or where could you take your, warm cup of coffee, and where could you actually say, how are things going for me? What do I want to bring into 2024 with me? And what do I want to leave out? What could I donate? What could I get rid of? Find that one little thing that's going to bring you more joy and bring it into your home. Why not?
Absolutely. No, it's
and if people need help with that, you can help them.
Yeah, definitely. I do, we have like the decluttering, system in place. And that's also something else that I didn't really talk about, which was minimalism and the importance of minimalism, which is essentially, again, that exploration, of selection to be really connected, to every item that's in our home, and so like my formula is just keep what you love and what you need, and anything in between, can go somewhere else. And just like you said, Tammy, like give it away, donate it, or sell it, or some stuff could, needs to be thrown away. But also what I love about minimalism is that we start to really have more of a, clear eye about, and keen eye about, the objects, physical object in our home. But most importantly, like you said, also going into our body and having an assessment, how does that feel? How does my home feel? What is this?
Mhm.
That's really, really important. But also what I was going to say about minimalism that I love is that it allows for sustainability, because then you're able to bring in objects where your investment is just really smart. And also it really nurtures our earth, because there's so much over consumerism.
Mhm.
Like I've done so many declutterings at homes, but I always tell them, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna create a system for you. We're gonna clear it out, and we're gonna create a system. And we do that together, by the way. It's a very collaborative, introspective process of selection. But then once that happens, the second most vital part is that you stop shopping and or stop consuming, because then, I went through it. We used to live in this huge house, and I had to fill it, and I became a
Yeah.
shopaholic. And it was kind of like, that was, like many years ago. But I learned, then I learned that it's not necessary, and sometimes less is more. But it's also better for our planet, because it's the only place we got to live,
Mhm.
Yeah, that's such a
really.
good point about the minimalism. I'm glad that you went there and touched on that, because I think anyone who has ever done a deep clean of their closet knows energetically what that feels like to have
Yes.
that done. It feels physically lighter. Like something
Oh,
in your body feels released from the old, either the old version of you or the stuck version that was stuck on wanting to be the old version of you. There's
Mhm.
some major permission that happens when you do a deep clean of things.
Yes.
I'm wondering if you have, without revealing your process completely, but do you have a quick tip for people? I mean, it's hard to declutter. I mean, it's difficult to do it by yourself sometimes, but do you have a little measure that you go against that people could use if they think, I want to declutter my desk? I'm going to use myself as an example, looking at my very messy desk over there. But it seems like everything on that desk, I don't know, it's like I can justify it somehow, right? But it probably doesn't all need to be there. So do you have a little system or a quick little thing that would help any of us when we're tackling something like that, to say this stays, this
yes.
goes?
Yes, I'm so glad you asked that. No, for sure. I really would invite people to have an emotional um awareness, because
Mm.
it could be really emotional. I have had some clients, especially with closets, and they weep
Oh yeah.
throughout the process or even afterwards, which is no judgment. It's all good, but it's definitely emotional. There's a lot of emotional content with materials, because we have attachments, and that we, basically solidify. So it's about
Mm.
letting go of the emotional attachments. But then when you realize, like looking at your desk, for example, yes, you need all those documents and you need all of that, but perhaps you can restructure, meaning you could bring in, some cabinet files, invest a little bit where it just looks more seamless, and it's so when you look at your desk, it's not an insidious subconscious sense of overwhelm, but
Mm.
it's more structured. Like, and literally, when I was doing the energetic fundamentals with John Amaral, by the way, who was featured in Goop, it is science, that energy, when it's structured, it just gives us calm and peace. And when
Mm.
it's sort of like clutter and all over the place, this chaotic energy that we are inhaling, that we are, swallowing into our system. And
Mhm.
that
I
doesn't
believe
have
it.
to be, because yes, the work is relevant, but you can totally change it a little bit, where you're able to store things properly in an organized manner, where you're able to create an efficient system for yourself.
Mhm. Mm. Well, I
All
feel like we
good.
could go on that topic
Oh
of
my gosh.
decluttering. Just
Yes. And Becky, by the way, I wanted to say I see you, and I loved the goatscaping that you did, by the way, because I was listening to you guys, other podcasts, and I had never heard of that. And that really exalted me because, the choice that you made was unconventional. It's like the road less traveled, and to like be talking about it is so, so important because you not only I mean I just feel like you were nurturing your land, but also these goats, in the sense of they feel, I feel like they had a sense of value, and also just the energy, to actually, it's almost like biophilic, like to have a living organism,
Oh, you're
you know
talking about the goats that I had
the
at the site. Oh,
goatscaping,
oh
right?
yeah,
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 on
yeah.
Tammy's property. Yeah,
Instead of
that was
using the
incredible.
chemicals, like I love that. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Love it.
there's
That
so
was
many
cool.
things. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
good. Well, energy, consciousness, harmony, and joy. What more can we
Yes.
say, people?
I know. We want it in our homes as much as we want it in our
Yes.
bodies. Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely, exactly. We are the source, and we are the ones that our human experience can be as unlimited as we want to, and is how consciousness works. So I really believe that we create our script and we create our program. We are our own creative directors, and we can really create the life we want. But of
Mhm.
course, we have to do the work, of
Have to do
who
the
do
work.
who do you have to be to lead the most extraordinary life? And I really think that's, the most fundamental question, for us to be open to upgrading ourselves, our behavior, and changing and letting go and unlearning. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that we all have that gift, that superpower, which is our intuition.
Mm.
So beautiful. And you work with people and groups on not 101, sorry, soul sessions, for example.
Oh
You
yeah,
offer
that's
cacao
yes.
ceremonies, right?
Yes, I usually, yeah, like do the soul sessions and Akashic records. Akashic records is more like the records and the ethers, which is kind of where the soul contracts are archived, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And again, energetically speaking. And so yeah, so those sessions sometimes, it's somehow I've drawn a lot of young people with the soul sessions, like where am I? What is my purpose? I need some guidance, kind of
Mm-hmm.
thing. I need some support. Am I on the right track? That kind of thing. So yeah, so I also do those personal soul sessions as well. We're not really supposed to know the future as far as my teachings go, what I've learned, but so I don't do too much of also the future. I think it's also like too much power on a person to
Mm-hmm.
kind of tell you what your future, because again, what I was saying earlier, we are our own creative directors. We lead. We are the leaders of our own life. But I can definitely shed some light into possibilities and synchronicities
Mm-hmm.
that could be felt, perceived for sure. But yeah, but again, so it's also, I'm really excited to have found you guys, because I feel like we're kindred, and moving from Rockland County into Westchester County, I'm sort of a new kid on the block. So I'm just really open, to assist,
Yeah.
and really just kind of, help each other and love each other.
Well, thank you so much today for opening up and being so vulnerable and sharing your story and your journey. We really appreciate that, and you taking the time out. We'll link in the show notes for everyone to be able to contact you. But yeah, if you're feeling, like energetically something might be off in your home, or you just want to know if there are things that you could do to have a more energetically supportive home for you and your family or your life, Nidia at Noble Souls, she is the real deal. So thank you, Nidia.
Yes. Thanks,
Thank you
Nidia.
so much. Thank you, Becky and Tammy. Thank you. Send you a big hug.
All right. That's
Thank
woo-woo
you.
in the real
Bye.
world.
Yes.
See
Peace
you
out.
next time.
Bye.